She stood in the grand chamber of the alien summit, mascara streaked down her cheeks, holding a tissue that wasn't doing much except absorbing snot and alien disdain. One of the Valari captains leaned to the other and murmured, loud enough for her translator chip to pick it up, "Is this the mighty human race? Reduced to sobbing females and ceremonial wet cloths." A few others chuckled, one mimicking a crying sound, and another pretended to trip over the hem of her morning dress. Lena Marlowe did not respond. She simply looked up, eyes hollow, chest shaking, then whispered under her breath, "You really shouldn't have said that." No one noticed her fingers twitching like muscle memory, like the hand of a soldier remembering how to grip a rifle. The day had begun in a swirl of cold air and even colder diplomacy. Lena had arrived on Yerva 9, humanity's newest peace partner, or so they claimed, with three things in her pocket: her husband's dog tags, a crumpled letter marked, "If I don't come back," and a malfunctioning anti-anxiety inhaler that hissed like a dying cat every time she used it. It was supposed to be a ceremonial trip. She was, by official decree, a civilian representative of human loss and emotional healing. What that really meant was that she was human window dressing, an emotional puppet trotted out to show that Earth was still noble, still tender-hearted, still capable of tears after losing her best sniper to a botched skirmish in neutral space. The aliens didn't care. Not really. The Valari, with their obsidian-scale skin and glowing throat sacs, viewed death the same way humans view power outages: annoying but inevitable. Their captains wore armor polished like a crime scene and looked at Lena like she was a bug that wouldn't stop dripping. The human ambassador had insisted her presence was strategic, part of the show. Lena had just nodded. What else could she do? Her husband, Captain Trent Marlowe, was dead, burned to ash during a classified mission gone wrong. The death report simply read, "No body recovered. Presumed vaporized." They had given her a medal, a triangular box of tissues, a place to cry. She had cried. Plenty. But not for them. After the summit, she returned to her quarters, a small cell-shaped suite aboard the human cruiser docked at the summit ring. She sat for a while on the bed, staring at nothing, until the ship's lights flickered and reset. Standard orbital sinking. That's when she noticed it again. The faint smudge on the corner of the wall locker, shaped like a fingerprint. Trent always left it when he cleaned his gear. He wasn't good at cleaning, but he was obsessive about hiding things in plain sight. Her fingers hovered over the locker's keypad. She didn't need to think hard. She tried the last date they'd spent together, down to the hour and minute they kissed goodbye before his mission. The light turned green. The locker hissed open. Inside, wrapped in thermal cloth and wedged beneath folded uniforms, lay the most illegal weapon Lena had ever seen: Trent's customized antimatter sniper rifle. They called it the Gasp in military circles, because it killed before you heard the shot. Next to it was a letter marked with a red symbol she didn't recognize and a datapad encrypted with a level of security far beyond her civilian clearance. But she knew how to break that. Trent had taught her. Because long before she was a grieving wife, Lena Marlowe had been something else entirely: a combat analyst and field partner. Not official, not on record, but they trained together in deep field. Trent used to say, "You cry better than you shoot, until you shoot better than anyone I know." She slid the rifle case under her bed and hid the letter inside her boot. Outside, alien night began to fall, purple fog creeping over the city domes like spilled ink. Somewhere above them, humans and aliens toasted a peace neither side truly believed in. That night, Lena didn't sleep. Instead, she listened to the summit transmissions using a jury-rigged translator loop. Nothing stood out until a conversation pinged in the Valari dialect, a side discussion between Captains Crox Tharn and Imel. They spoke of an Echo protocol and a failed asset recovery in Zone Red. One of them mentioned the sniper who wouldn't stay dead. The words sent a cold crack down her spine. Was it metaphor, propaganda, or something else? The next morning, she sat at breakfast pretending to eat what was either alien porridge or melted plastic. Her hands trembled. Not from fear, from restraint. The rifle was still under her bed. The datapad now decrypted, revealing half-coded logs of troop movements and encrypted files labeled Echo, Zeta Thresh, and one simply titled Elda Marlowe. Someone was watching her. Someone expected her to find that locker. But why? Was Tren alive? A knock at her door broke her thoughts. It was Ambassador Pritchard. Puffy-eyed, nervous, holding a clipboard like it was a weapon. "Lena, you're being asked to attend another ceremony," he said. "They're impressed with your genuine emotional display yesterday. They think it's excellent propaganda." She stared at him like he'd just told her dog died again. "Do I have a choice?" "Technically, no." She smiled without humor. "Then let's give them a real show." That afternoon, she walked into the grand chamber again, but this time with steady steps. Her eyes still shimmered, but not from sadness. She stopped beside the same alien captain who had mocked her tears. Crox Tharn turned, expecting more sobbing. Instead, Lena leaned in and whispered, "Do you know what a widow's last promise sounds like in my language?" He tilted his head, curious. She smiled softly. Bang. And then she walked away. No one noticed the alien diplomat at the far end of the room slump in his seat, dead before his drink spilled. A microscopic puncture in his neck. No sound. No flash. Just silence. The widow had stopped crying. The hunt had begun. The alien diplomat's death was ruled a cardiac failure by the Volari medical team. No one questioned it. Not officially. The man had been old, bloated with ceremonial toxins, and known for his indulgent diet of sentient shellfish. But those who knew the truth, those who understood how rare cardiac failures were among the Volari, knew better. Crox Tharn hadn't laughed once during the summit that followed. Lena noticed. She also noticed the sudden increase in Volari guards positioned around the chamber, the way their helmets tracked her movement an extra second longer than anyone else's. She played her role, tearful and dignified, but inside, the blood in her veins was electric. Something had shifted. She had made the first move. Now she needed her second. Back in her quarters, she dismantled Trent's rifle across the floor and polished it with the methodical patience of someone folding grief into purpose. Each piece held memories, his initials carved beneath the stock, a chip in the scope from a mission in the Hovari Canyons, the faint scent of ozone from its last discharge. She cleaned it all with bare hands and no gloves. Let the sensors read her fingerprints. Let them come. She wanted them to know she was here. Wanted them to squirm. The letter she found in the locker had more than just coordinates. It had a phrase written in Trent's rushed handwriting. "Find Bleep. He owes me 2 fingers and a map." She had no idea who or what Bleep was, but if Trent trusted him, it was a lead. She uploaded the coordinates into her stolen Volari NAV chip and prepared for a detour into the lower districts of Yervan 9, where diplomatic immunity meant nothing and oxygen was taxed by the hour. She disguised herself in an ill-fitting technician suit, dyed her hair silver with boot polish and nanogel, and carried only a concealed plasma knife. The rifle stayed behind, wrapped in a thermal blanket like a sleeping child. She couldn't risk it in the open. Yet. The ride to the lower ring was rough, a magnet rail freight elevator that groaned like an old throat. The air changed as she descended, thicker, oilier, the smell of industrial decay. Alien workers, black market dealers, failed bounty hunters, and biohackers filled the streets like insects swarming a carcass. It didn't take long to find Bleep. He was exactly where the data ping suggested, slumped inside a booth at a pulsating dive called the Acid Yawn, surrounded by empty drink tubes and a faint cloud of something definitely not legal. He had the unmistakable look of someone who had once been dangerous and now wore regret like a second skin. He was part Krazulian, meaning one arm was mechanical, one was tentacle, and his eyes blinked sideways. "You're Bleep," Lena said, sliding into the booth. "You're wearing cheap perfume and hiding a plasma knife," Bleep replied without looking up. "Also, you're late. Trent said you'd find me 3 weeks ago." Typical human emotional detours. "He's dead." Bleep snorted, then adjusted the rusted scope over his left eye. "Sure he is." Lena pulled out a strip of metal from her pocket, a piece from Trent's last confirmed mission drone. Burned, but with his serial number still intact. Bleep stared at it for a long moment, his humor fading. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a data chip, sliding it across the table. "That's a map to the Red Silence Zone," he said. "Unmarked territory, off limits to humans and a few aliens with survival instincts." Trent went there trying to dig into Echo Protocol. He didn't come back. "But I picked up a data burst from that zone last week, a human distress signal with a pattern match to his bio ID." Lena's throat tightened. So he could be alive. Or it's a trap. Or a clone. Or one of those psychic honey traps the Volari use to break minds. But yeah, he could be alive. She pocketed the chip. "What do you want in return?" "I want you to kill a guy who owes me a memory module," Bleep said. "But he's already dead. So nothing. I just like messing with people." She left him there, muttering to himself, and made her way back to the surface. But her return was delayed. She hadn't made it past the outer gate when a soft voice spoke from behind her. "You walk like someone trained by military, but you hide like someone afraid of herself." She turned. The woman standing there was tall, half Volari, half human by the look of her sharp eyes and softly glowing fingertips. She wore a med-tech uniform but stood like a soldier. "My name is Zara," she said. "I was part of Echo Protocol." Lena didn't speak. "You don't have to trust me," Zara continued. "But I can tell you one thing your files won't. Your husband isn't just alive. He's been repurposed. Echo Protocol doesn't waste talent. They erase it, then rewrite it. Right now, Trent Marlowe believes he's someone else. And if you go to him without a plan, he will kill you on sight." Lena's jaw clenched. "Then, I'll just have to make him remember." Zara shook her head. "Memories don't survive the mind splitter. Love doesn't survive Echo. You'll need more than a reunion. You'll need an override." Back aboard her quarters, Lena finally opened the encrypted drive Bleep had given her. The map was incomplete, corrupted. But one sector glowed red, the entrance to the Red Silence Zone. She loaded coordinates into a disposable drone and launched it into orbit, letting it bounce signals until it found a clean trajectory. As it flew, Lena prepped the rifle. She calibrated the scope, adjusted the antimatter containment field, and slipped a tracer into the chamber. That night, during another state ceremony filled with alien songs and saccharine speeches about peace, Lena disappeared. Her drone returned with thermal scans, deep underground heat signatures that didn't match any alien structures. She found herself on a lone cliff outside the summit ring, lying flat in alien dust, crosshairs trained on a distant signal tower known to scramble human tracking devices. A human diplomat stepped out onto the platform, speaking with a Volari captain. Lena didn't hesitate. One silent breath. One silent pull of a trigger. A burst of red mist. The diplomat collapsed. Panic erupted on the tower. Sirens screamed through the canyons. She left no trace. No noise. Just a fading echo of a shot that no one could locate. Later that night, while the aliens scoured the city for snipers that didn't exist, a message played on a secure human channel. "Target Marlowe has resurfaced. Unknown variable intercepted trajectory. Widow confirmed hostile. Activate containment." Lena Marlowe wasn't a grieving widow anymore. She was a weapon, and she had just fired the second shot of a war no one saw coming. The first thing Lena noticed about the Red Silence Zone was the absence of sound. Even her boots, designed to crunch on the granular surface of the alien terrain, made no noise. It wasn't just quiet, it was devoured silence, like the air itself refused to carry sound. The deeper she went, the more her senses rebelled. Her inner ear ached from the pressure, and her eyes watered constantly, even behind a filtered visor. This place didn't want her here. It didn't want anyone. That alone told her she was getting close to something that mattered. The entrance to the facility wasn't marked by walls or gates. It appeared as a heat shimmer against the cliff face, an illusion that vanished only when she stepped within a few meters, revealing a narrow seam in the rock. It opened like a wound. Zara had warned her. The Red Silence Zone wasn't built by any one species. It was a repurposed structure, grown out of living stone fused with synthetic veins, powered by alien biotech and human fear. Echo Protocol had made it their heart. Lena slipped inside, guided by the cracked map bleep had given her and the motion sensors installed in her suit. There were no guards, no alarms. The facility had long ago evolved past the need for visible security. That's why she moved slowly, breathing through a regulator, each step calculating, silent, measured. Her rifle was strapped to her back, powered down but ready. She carried instead a short-range disruptor, something she could discharge without alerting every Sentinel AI embedded in the walls. As she advanced, her visor began to glitch. Blurred edges, flashing symbols, flickers of faces that weren't there. She switched to manual sight, wiping her lenses with a rag soaked in saline. The hallucinations didn't stop. Echo Protocol's defenses weren't physical, they were psychological. Memories twisted into confusion, sounds layered with wrong voices. At one point, she heard Trent's voice call her name from behind her. When she turned, she saw nothing. When she turned back, the hallway had changed shape. Time didn't behave normally inside the zone. Her internal clock lost sync. At first, she thought minutes had passed. Then her watch blinked 6 hours ahead. She injected a stabilizer into her neck and kept moving. In one corridor, she found a room filled with dozens of identical uniforms. Her husband's sniper gear, each labeled with his name. Different sizes, different patches, some still wet with blood. She kept walking, hand tight on her weapon, rage beginning to build like a low hum under her skin. When she reached the containment core, she nearly missed it. It looked like a room-sized crystal encased in black metal veins, pulsing with a light that matched the beat of her heart. Inside, suspended in a zero-G field, was Trent Marlowe. He looked older, not physically, but in posture. His face was thinner, jaw tense, lips slightly parted as if mid-sentence. He wore no insignia, no badge. Just a tight black suit with a neural interface wrapping around the back of his head like a crown of wires. She took one slow step toward the glass, heart pounding. No alarms, no movement, just him, suspended. Then he opened his eyes. There was no recognition. He didn't flinch. Instead, he moved with robotic precision, placing his hands against the inner surface of the glass. A pulse of energy ran through the containment wall, and an automated voice filled the chamber. Calm, sterile, inhuman. Subject 117 Marlowe. Stimulation complete. Response neutral. Memory anchor not achieved. Prepare for confrontation. The glass slid open without warning. Trent dropped to the floor in a crouch, instantly rolling to his feet. His movements were fluid, lethal. He looked directly at Lena, eyes empty of familiarity, but full of calculation. Then he spoke. "Identify yourself." She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a metal token, an old, scratched coin they had exchanged on their third field mission. It had been a joke then, a reminder of who they were before war changed them. He didn't react. She stepped forward slowly. Her Trent, would have flinched by now, would have lowered the weapon he was drawing. Instead, he leveled it at her chest. She knew she could draw faster. She also knew she wouldn't. "Trent, it's Lena." No response. "You taught me to shoot. You made me memorize every rifle we touched. You told me I cried better than I shot, until I shot better than anyone you knew." His eye twitched. Barely. She took a risk. She stepped into the line of fire. "Shoot me, Trent." Still no change. But his hand trembled. "Do it. Kill me if you don't remember. Otherwise, come back." He didn't fire. Instead, his gun dropped to his side as a shudder passed through him. Then he collapsed. A siren wailed through the compound, high-pitched wrong, like a scream fed through broken speakers. Lena rushed forward, catching him just before he hit the floor. His pulse was erratic. His pupils dilated and constricted in pulses like Morse code. Behind her, a voice emerged from the darkness. "You broke the cycle too early." Zara stepped into view, hands covered in blood, not hers. She had fought her way through another path, dragging with her a data module attached to what looked like the remains of a neural interface core. She tossed it at Lena's feet. "Override sequence complete. He's yours again." How? It was coded in his guilt. in the one thing Echo couldn't erase. He didn't fear death. He feared hurting you. Lena looked down at Trent. He was breathing heavily now, eyes unfocused. "Lena?" He croaked it like he hadn't spoken in years. She nodded, pressing her forehead to his. "I'm here." Movement flickered in the glass walls around them. Lena turned, rifle up. AI sentries mobilizing. A lockdown protocol had begun. They had minutes, maybe less. "Can he walk?" "Barely. But I'll carry him." Zara led the way, hacking doors with the data spike and throwing pulse grenades into rooms ahead of them. At one point, Lena had to stop to shoot a descending drone that opened fire without warning. Her shot was clean, through the drone's core and into the wall beyond. She felt no triumph, just the rising fury of what had been done. As they neared the exit, the air changed again. The silence receded. They could hear each other breathe. Once outside, with Trent half-conscious and leaning against her, Lena stared at the burning structure behind them. It pulsed erratically now, broken, exposed. She should have felt relief, but all she felt was the sting of betrayal. Because deep inside that facility, before they'd left, she had seen a room full of names. Hers was on the list. Marked, Subject 118 Lenamerlo. Echo Protocol hadn't just planned to use her as bait. They had planned to turn her next. The air outside the red silence zone was sharper than before, colder somehow, like the entire planet exhaled after watching something unnatural leave its gut. Lena adjusted Trent's weight on her shoulder. He was awake now, but barely lucid, murmuring things that sounded like broken instructions, fragments of code, and numbers that repeated in patterns. Zara walked beside them, with her eyes constantly scanning the horizon, pulse rifle drawn, her lips pressed into a grim line that made it clear they weren't safe yet. The facility might be behind them, but the war it represented was far from over. Trent's escape wouldn't go unnoticed, and Lena could feel it like pressure in the air. Someone, somewhere, had just realized they lost their best weapon. They reached the extraction point, a jagged cliffside where Lena's stolen dropship was cloaked beneath chameleon mesh. The hatch opened silently, welcoming them into a cramped, outdated interior that reeked of alien fuel and survival rations. Zara took the cockpit without waiting to be asked. Lena laid Trent on the cot in the back, strapping him in as the engines began their startup sequence. He twitched under her hands, eyes flickering open for seconds at a time. "Do you know who I am?" He blinked slowly, and then his lips moved. Target acquired weight. "Lena?" She squeezed his hand and leaned closer. "You're safe. You're with me now." His head lolled to the side, but she could see it in his face, the beginnings of clarity, the way a man wakes from a nightmare not fully gone but fading enough to question it. Trent's voice rasped again, lower this time. "I thought I killed you. They made me think I had to. You didn't. You tried. But you missed. First time for everything." A weak smile tugged at his mouth, then disappeared. The ship lifted off in a slow arc, veering east toward the neutral sky corridor that would take them to the edge of Volari jurisdiction. There was a plan now, vague but forming: reach the summit ring again, access the ambassadorial networks, and upload the data Zara had ripped from Echo Protocol's core. Let the galaxy see what had been happening beneath their noses. It wouldn't stop the war, but it would change its shape. No one could fight a shadow once it had a name. But the Volari weren't going to let them go without response. Halfway through the corridor, a proximity alarm screamed. 3 dots on the radar, moving fast. Small fighter class, no transponders, running cold. Black Ops units. Lena cursed under her breath and ran to the co-pilot seat. "We can't outrun them. We're too heavy." "We don't need to outrun them," Zara said. "We just need to drop them fast enough." She spun the ship sideways, the artificial gravity momentarily failing as Lena gripped the railings. Trent moaned in the back, but stayed strapped down. The first missile came in hot, a streak of blue heat that missed the hull by inches as Zara counterspun, locking one of the fighters into view. Lena took the forward cannon, something she hadn't used since training simulations with Trent years ago. It felt too light, too twitchy. But she lined up the shot, whispered an old phrase under her breath, and fired. The blast cut through the Volari craft like a hot wire through soft flesh. It spun into the second fighter, both exploding in tandem with a ripple that painted the sky with brief fire. The third peeled away, reassessing. Lena turned to Zara. They're stalling. Buying time for something. Or waiting for orders. Doesn't matter. We're not staying in this sky. They burst through the neutral corridor and into the signal-rich field surrounding the summit ring. Diplomatic beacons blinked around them, signaling the no-combat zone. The third fighter broke off and vanished into the clouds. Coward or smart. Either way, they were safe for now. When they docked, Lena wasted no time. She uploaded the full Echo protocol data into the Summit's secure servers, blasting a wideband alert to human and alien consulates alike. The files included names, experiment logs, body counts, and dozens of recovered memory echoes from victims, screaming voices, confused recordings of soldiers trying to remember their families, and in Trent's case, a video of him looking into a mirror and asking, over and over, who he was supposed to kill next. The reaction was instant and chaotic. Within minutes, internal messages flared across every channel. Human military command denied knowledge, then retracted the statement. Volari intelligence feigned ignorance, then accused humans of using emotional manipulation as warfare. Other species began to demand independent investigations. Summit guards doubled. Delegates locked themselves in security rooms. Lena watched it all unfold from a quiet chamber, with Trent resting beside her and Zara pacing like a caged animal. You think this will be enough? It's never enough, Zara replied. But it's a start. We expose them. That puts a target on their backs. We just painted one on ours too. Lena sat down, fatigue creeping into her bones. But she didn't let it show. She couldn't. Not yet. Her mind kept drifting back to the room full of uniforms. The line of names. Her own file. Echo hadn't chosen her just for emotional leverage. They had seen potential. Maybe more than she wanted to admit. Trent stirred and slowly sat up, wincing. His voice was stronger now. They had you in the system. I know. Were you going to tell me? Eventually. After we survived. They locked eyes for a long moment. Pain, trust, regret, and something else, acknowledgement. That the war had changed both of them. And the worst part was still ahead. Zara's datapad beeped. She looked down and then let out a sound between a groan and a laugh. You'll love this, she said. The Volari just issued an arrest warrant for Lena Marlowe. For what? War crimes. Psychological destabilization. Theft of cultural secrets. Oh, an assassination of a diplomat with devastating emotional intent. Lena let out a sharp breath, then chuckled. Devastating emotional intent. That's a new one. They're scared of you now. Not just you as the widow. You as the weapon. Good. Let them be. The door opened. Ambassador Pritchard entered. Face pale, clothes ruffled. He looked like someone who had just watched his career implode. Do you have any idea what you've done? Lena stood. All of it. On purpose. This isn't how diplomacy works. Then maybe diplomacy needs to work differently. She brushed past him, headed for the hall where the captains and diplomats were already gathering. The fallout meeting had begun. All parties had been summoned. They were going to scream, accuse, deny. She was going to make them listen. As she stepped into the summit chamber, silence spread like a dropped curtain. Dozens of alien captains turned. Crox Tharn was there too, arms still partially regenerated, glaring at her like she was death itself. She walked to the center of the room. I was brought here to cry, she said. To show weakness. To play the grieving widow. She reached into her coat and pulled out the memory chip containing Echo's most damning footage. Now you're going to cry. All of you. And then she activated the feed. The summit chamber descended into chaos the moment the first clip played. The image flickered to life in the center of the room, projected in brutal clarity. A young soldier, strapped to a gurney, screamed as neural fire danced across his head. Voices, human and alien, asked him the same question repeatedly. Who do you serve? His cries echoed through the chamber, bouncing off the marble-like walls, washing over the delegates like a storm tide. No one dared to move. No one could pretend not to see. The Echo Protocol wasn't a rumor anymore. It was real, recorded, undeniable. Lena watched them all, scanning their faces one by one. Some looked away in shame. Others simply hardened their expressions, calculating political damage. And then there were those who still didn't get it, who still thought they could spin this. Crox Tharn stepped forward, his wounded arm now replaced by a shimmering prosthetic that hummed with low power. His eyes glowed faintly, and his voice came out smooth, condescending, as though none of this had touched him. "This proves nothing," he said. "War has always had its shadows. Why is this any different?" "Because this wasn't war," Lena said. "This was control. This was slaughter disguised as science. You didn't just take soldiers. You took people. And you made them think they chose it." She turned back to the crowd, the feed still playing in the background, now showing Trent barely conscious, being trained to pull a trigger in front of holographic images of her. Over and over, until he stopped flinching. "You built weapons out of grief. You harvested trauma like it was fuel." The murmurs grew louder, the translators working overtime to keep pace with the accusations and denials. Zara stood off to the side, watching with sharp eyes, recording everything. Trent remained in the medical chamber behind the summit room, recovering but alert. Lena hadn't let him come in. Not for this. He had lived it. Now it was time for others to face it. Ambassador Pritchard tried to take control, stepping onto the platform and clearing his throat like it could restore order. "We call for immediate suspension of Echo-related programs," he said, visibly sweating. "And we request an intergalactic tribunal to investigate further." "Request denied," Crox Tharn snapped. "If your people cannot keep your monsters leashed, do not ask us to clean your blood." Lena laughed once, a sharp sound that cut through the noise. "That's rich, coming from a species that thinks torture is a growth hormone." "Enough," another delegate shouted. "From the Colleen, a species known for neutrality. This is no longer about blame. It's about accountability. The truth is out. That changes everything." "Not everything," Lena said quietly. "Some things stay the same." She reached into her jacket and pulled out a final data chip. This one wasn't about Echo. This one was about the chain of command. It listed the names of every high-ranking official, human, alien, and hybrid, who had signed off on Echo's existence. It included private communications, logs of secret meetings, currency transfers, and kill orders. Lena had spent the last few days decrypting it, with Zara's help. It was the backbone, the spine of corruption. "I'm not asking for anything anymore," she said. "I'm giving you one choice. Make this public. Dismantle what you built. Or I leak this entire database to every colony, station, and rebel faction across 4 systems. And you'll start a war," Crox growled. "No," she said. "I'll let one finish." There was silence. Long, pulsing, electric. Then, slowly, the Colleen delegate raised his hand and said, "I move to accept the motion to open investigation and suspend all covert neurological reprogramming under Intergalactic Charter." "Seconded," came another voice. The vote passed, though not unanimously. But enough. The captains who opposed left in disgust or fear. Crox Tharn said nothing more, just turned and walked out with a snarl, his bodyguard close behind. Later that night, Lena sat in the recovery ward with Trent. He was more present now. The fog had cleared enough that he could smile, even if it didn't quite reach his eyes. She fed him pieces of dry ration bread, and they talked in low voices about anything but war. "Do you remember the training yard on Orion Outpost?" she asked. He nodded. "You fell off the wall 3 times before you made it over. And you laughed every time. You threw a rock at me the 3rd time. We were children playing soldier," she whispered. "We were soldiers trying to play human." They lapsed into silence. But it was different now. Not empty. Just full of things that didn't need to be said. By the next day, Lena was famous. Or infamous. Depending on the viewpoint. Some saw her as a savior, others as a terrorist. The term Widowmaker was used often, but not just because of the weapon. It was what they called her now. The Widowmaker. The one who turned grief into revolution. She refused every military appointment offered, denied every interview request. Instead, she opened a civilian training center near the Outer Belt, under a temporary ceasefire zone. Zara helped her run it. Trent taught the classes when he was strong enough. They trained civilians how to survive, how to see through propaganda, how to fight if they had to, but most of all, how to think like survivors instead of victims. Widowmaker Academy was what the locals called it. Its motto was spray-painted on the entrance wall in 6 languages: Grieve hard. Fight harder. People came from every system. Not just soldiers, but orphans, medics, farmers, exiles. Anyone who'd lost someone and refused to let that be the end of their story. And though Lena still struggled with the nights, some filled with dreams, others with memories twisted by echo, she kept going. Because the world didn't need perfect heroes. It needed honest ones. One day, months later, a child arrived at the gate. A girl with dark eyes, maybe 10 years old. She held a faded photo in her hand, clutched tight like a passport. Lena saw her talking to Zara first, then being led toward the main courtyard. Trent was teaching. The girl walked up to him, holding out the photo. He took it slowly, blinking at it, and his face changed. Lena stepped forward, something cold and familiar settling in her chest. She got close enough to see the image clearly. It was a picture of Trent, years ago, holding a woman Lena had never seen before. "My mother told me he was my father," the girl said. "She died last year. I've been looking for him." Trent looked at Lena. His mouth opened to speak, but no sound came out. The girl looked up again. "Are you him?" He swallowed. "I think I might be." Lena didn't move, didn't speak. She simply turned, walked toward the edge of the courtyard, and stared out into the sky where the stars were starting to burn through the fading dusk. Behind her, a life she didn't know existed was forming. Another twist, another lie, another truth she hadn't asked for. But she stood tall, because the war was never really over, and neither was she.